Have you ever wanted a roguelite experience where you run around killing everything in sight while picking up items that improve your character to the point where everything you look at explodes and you don't really know what's going on anymore, but you kind of do?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what is happening?
With your friends? Well, that's this game! Risk of Rain 2 is a third-person hero shooter roguelite, and guess what? It's really good! Let's talk about the core gameplay loop. So you pick one of 6 currently available characters and survive as long as you can, going through levels, picking up items, and killing everything. Each character has 4 unique abilities: a basic attack, a secondary attack, a utility skill like a jump or a shield, and a big DPS button.
You gotta unlock most of the characters, but it's pretty easy and it doesn't take that long.
In each level, you will be tasked with finding a teleporter that'll take you to the next level. Strewn randomly across the level are loot boxes that you need cash to open. Not from your credit card though, just murder the native inhabitants of the world for money. These chests give you passive items that increase your character's abilities in some way, from, hey, you move a little bit faster, to, all of your attacks literally explode. There are also active items that have impactful effects at the cost of only being able to hold one and it having a cooldown on it, like summoning an army of missile drones, or making a black hole, or just shooting all your money for no real value. In addition to standard chests, there are also Choose 3 shops where you can choose 1 item out of 3 to buy, chance shrines that steal all your money and might possibly grace you with items, and damaged drones that help you murder everything when you repair them. Which cost money for some reason.
Greedy robots.
There are also 3D printers that randomly take one of your items of a certain rarity and give you the advertised item in return. These are fun, especially when you do this. When you find the teleporter, you press the button and it summons a boss, or 6, that you have to kill. You also have to stand by the teleporter long enough for it to fully charge up while enemies are constantly trying to end your life. Once you do both of those things, the enemies stop spawning and you can stroll back through the level to get any of the loot that you missed before moving on to the next stage. You better not take too long though. There's a difficulty timer that increases the longer the run goes, which goes from easy to Once you clear all 4 stages, you loop around back to the first stage, but now it's much harder. There are less chests, there are more enemies, more bosses. You just keep going until you freaking die, and maybe there are some hidden things that you can only find after your first loop. And that's pretty much the gist of the game, and it's addicting as heck. Pros. This game is almost a perfect transition from the 2D the first game was in to the 3D that this one is in. The first one was fun, but this one really brings it up to a new level. It's extremely satisfying how your character grows from a standard run and shoot kind of person into a completely ridiculous killing machine that feels like you turned on Cheat Engine or something. You get different flavors of crazy based on what items you get and how they stack, and oh boy do they stack. Like getting an item that thrusts you forward a bit when you jump isn't that exciting, but if you get 2 or 3 or 5 more of that same item, suddenly jumps propel you halfway across the freaking map. The item variety is pretty good and the majority of them are fun to get. There's only a few items I feel like are no fun to get. You heard me, crowdfunder. You heard me, crowbar. The item effects also interact with each other, so if you get a bunch of crit chance shades, then get a few ukuleles that make your attacks arc lightning, and then get some will-o-wisp that make enemy deaths cause an area explosion, you can get chain death crit lightnings that explode and everything dies. As you play the game and complete certain challenges, you will unlock more items for future runs. A lot of them are pretty reasonable, but then there's one where you're supposed to walk 20 hermit crabs off the map, and I haven't honestly even attempted that one. There's also this secondary currency you can randomly get by killing enemies called lunar coins. You can spend these at pods for special effects that do even crazier double-edged stuff, like picking up shaped glass gives you double damage but cuts your life in half. There's also a shrine that trades all of your items for one kind of item in each rarity. That's how I ended up with 16 shades and 11 ukuleles. This sequencer is great for doing meme runs, and you know me, I'm all about some dang memes. All of the current classes are fairly unique in how they play. If you want a pretty flexible character that can do a lot, there's Commando and Multi. If you want to zoom around the map and never touch the ground and not have to worry about aiming, there's Huntress. If you want to do the big damage and be unconventional compared If you want to do big damage and be unconventional compared to the others, there's Artificer and Engineer. And if you want to be an anime ninja that dashes from enemy to enemy and tangibly slashing them, then there's Mercenary. Different characters have better interactions with certain items, and items have better interactions with different items, so you're never quite looking for the exact same thing. For example, there's an item that gives you an extra charge of your right-click ability. On Engineer, this is pretty useless because he already has 10 charges of his right-click, but on Huntress or Artificer, whose right-clicks do big damage, it's a major power spike. Oh, I did mention this game has co-op, right? Co-op makes everything better. Calling out builds and trying to divvy up loot to the most appropriate character can be fun. Or you could always just ninja loot everything. If someone dies during a level, they get revived with full health and some mercy experience if you make it to the next level, so they don't have to sit out forever. That isn't to say that the single player experience is unfun. It's really good too, because you can keep all the dang loot to yourself. The game definitely has a solid base for an early access game, but nothing is perfect, so let's look at some of the cons. Bosses are mostly there to soak up damage. They only have 2 or 3 attacks. There's 2 bosses' attacks in particular I think are mega lame. The Wandering Vagrant Giant Jellyfish has an attack where it makes a big AoE shockwave that does massive damage. The only way to dodge it is to hide behind something or get very far away before it goes off, which can be hard to do in some areas and in the early game. This attack didn't really get me past the first couple hours I played, but I decided to leave it in here because why not? This second attack though, this one can still get me sometimes. The other attack is the Stone Titan's laser beam, where it shoots a continuous beam at you that tracks even behind it sometimes. You can't outrun it either unless you've got some ungodly movement speed, making your option to, again, hide behind terrain, which can just be difficult to do sometimes. Enemy ranged attacks in general can be weird. A lot of them are instant with some pretty accurate tracking. If you're playing one of the less mobile classes, it can get a little bit annoying. Hermit crabs. They're enemies that burrow into the ground, making them hard to see, and shoot rocks at you like artillery. They're just not a very fun enemy type. I get that their purpose is to keep players moving, but sometimes a bunch spawn at once and I'm like, murder all crustaceans. Near instant deaths are a real possibility, especially the further you get. I'm not sure if this is a con or not, but when you get to the 4th stage and beyond, some enemies and elite enemies can just one-shot your ass without much warning. You gotta stay on top of those enemy types. Ancient Lemurian. Ah! Some people complain that the game is empty, but I'm not really sure I agree. Maybe the first 2 levels of the first loop, it takes a bit for enemies to start spawning and the game to get going, but there's always something to find. And that's all I really have to complain about. And honestly, those are pretty small issues. And the game is in early access. Right now, there is no final level and no boss. Right now, you just loop through the same 4 stages until you die. Stage 1 and 2 have a variant that you can get, but stage 3 and 4 are always the same. There's much less content than the original game right now, and I really want to see Shotgun Boy in the game. The OST in the second game isn't quite as banging as the original, but there aren't that many tracks in this one yet, and the original is a pretty big shoe to fill, so we'll see there. There's also a roadmap out detailing big updates, with the nearest one being in June. The devs are going to add more, well, everything to the game as its life continues, and that's dope. Which brings me to my conclusion. This game slaps. It's simple, but the enjoyment of murdering things in slightly different but equally over-the-top ways is great. It's pretty much become my ultimate chill game when I just want to play something and I don't want to have to worry about using brain too much. It's also really easy to convince the homies to play for a couple runs. You can find this game for $20 USD on that Steam machine. and that might be a little bit steep for an indie game, but I think it's definitely worth it. I can't wait to see what the updates add. 2 Lainz, out.